This is how it always begins.
Hello everybody, I'm Kate Cass, and welcome to an edition of Let's Talk About. Today, let's talk about Infinity Train. I'm not the first to say that Infinity Train is one of the most innovative and well thought out animated shows of all time. You might know my feelings on the show already if you saw my favorite entertainment of 2020 list, where the seasons from last year took the #1 spot, and you definitely know my feelings if you follow me on Twitter lately. Which is why I wanted to take the time to actually do a video on this show to sing its praises. And since season 4 just came out back in April, this feels like a good excuse to do so. So let's take a look at Infinity Train Book 4, Duet. Also, spoilers. Just putting that out there right now. Ryan and Mingi are lifelong friends who are going their separate ways as they become adults, but they'll be forced to head in the same direction as they get swept onto the mysterious infinite train to sort out their problems and find the harmony in their friendship. Also, not die. That's pretty important too. Seeing the premise for this season promoted and watching the season progress presents the big thing that makes Infinity Train unique: the variety in storytelling. Up to this point, while each season of Infinity Train followed a different set of protagonists, it was in a linear passage of time. Each season took place after the other, and we usually met the protagonist of the next season in the previous one. That changed with Book 4, with a completely fresh starring duo taking place several years before any of the events we've seen on the show so far, and the only characters we're familiar with being relegated to cameos. But more on them in a bit. Right from the get-go, it just proved to me the vast potential for telling different stories that an animated anthology like Infinity Train has. It's been a while since we travel with people not well acquainted with the train already. It brings a bit of wonder and mystery back to the show. The mystery is also amplified by the fact that this season takes place before Amelia's takeover, which is an incredibly fascinating take. So far we'd only seen what life was like while Amelia was in control of the train, or right after 1-1 became the conductor again. So from a world building standpoint, everything about the train feels a little bit different this time. While the basic idea is similar, learn lessons and grow as a person to get off, there's differences in how passengers are treated. Like how they have designated uniforms that come with those magnetic boots that the Apex all seem to have, which makes me wonder how those kids got their hands on them, but that's beside the point. There's a particularly cool detail where the steward can freeze the train and its denizens and lock passengers in place with the boots to give them announcements. That's incredible and terrifying all at the same time. What else could you ask for from Infinity Train? But don't worry, while a lot of Book 4 is different, there is still a lot of what makes Infinity Train traditionally fantastic, especially as a location for a plethora of exciting adventures. The creativity in the cars continues, and it gives us a variety of great locations, challenging obstacles, and memorable characters. Heck, the first car our main heroes wind up in is a car where evolution is controlled by a dial. The art gallery car provides us with our nightmare fuel for this season, which may not be as intense as Book 3, but still kept me up that night. And how did it take us until season 4 to get an Old West car? Then there was the Pig Baby car, which disturbs me on so many levels. It's weird and not in a cool way. I don't like it. I don't care if the pig is voiced by J.K. Simmons, that somehow makes it worse. Book 4 continues the boundless imagination the show encourages. Even if it creates some rather unusual things, it's something that I always loved about the premise and setting of the series. Then there's our passengers for the season, Ryan and Mingi. While this isn't the first time we've had multiple passengers, this is the first time we've seen 2 people board the train at once, or get the same number. Something that's perplexing to anyone familiar with how the train works. It's another one of those plot points that explores more of the possibilities this concept provides. The show gives us a great introduction at who Min and Ryan are. Even though they are best friends and have a similar passion for music, they are very different people. Ryan is a free-spirited go-getter, Min is a level-headed, responsible young man. This difference in their attitudes towards life doesn't really come into effect until they start becoming young adults, having to make those big choices about what to do with their lives. The first episode does an amazing job at illustrating this. There's this great split-screen segment that everyone has praised, where they show how differently these two are living their lives apart and how much trouble they're having figuring things out. A segment that ends when they finally reunite, and oh my gosh, whoever did the storyboarding and layout work for the sequence, bravo. The way it ends is simple yet stunning when you watch it play out. Anyway, the dialogue and interactions are great between them. They act like 2 guys who have known each other their entire lives. The way they joke around, roll their eyes, and even the ways they get frustrated with each other. There's clearly a lot unsaid between them, and that's what this is all for. Work out your problems, or die. It's pretty straightforward. I also saw a lot of fans appreciating Ryan and Min as well-done Asian representation. People seemed to relate to them and enjoyed how they were portrayed in that respect. Especially that part where Min's mom gives Ryan a bag of oranges. Apparently that's a really Asian parent thing to do from what I've heard. There's also a lot of fun bits around the fact that Ryan and Min are Canadian too. It's a variety in depiction of characters that goes a long way towards feeling organically inclusive. People of all kinds come from all over the place, and this is a good showcase of that. Ryan and Min aren't on this journey alone though. They have their own denizen tag-along, Kez. As soon as I saw Kez, I immediately fell in love. It's such a ridiculously simple idea, a floating, talking call bell. That's it. But something about the simplicity is just so charming, and Kez has a pretty unexpected personality to go with it. Kez is oblivious, dismissive, and has no filter for making a comment on anything. Not only that, but she's a notorious troublemaker. The first half of the cars in this season seem to all have denizens in them who have a problem with Kez, mostly because she caused some sort of problem for them before waving it off and bailing. She's one of those characters who could be insufferable if not handled well. Thankfully, they do 3 very important things. 1, they know how to tailor her dialogue to make her antics equal parts funny, frustrating, and strangely flirty, with Minty Lewis's amazing delivery to back him up. Kez's moments usually had me smiling rather than groaning, which is no small feat. 2, she's not malicious. She's not great at dealing with a problem diplomatically or sensitively, or at all really, but she does care about others, shown through her developing relationship with Min and Ryan. She's not great at it, but she does want to help them and grows to appreciate their friendship, to the point that she tries to help them mend their own lifelong friendship, even when, again, she's not the best at it. It's that part of Kez that'll be part of significant character development, which is the third thing they do. The more we learn about Kez, the more her position when we meet her starts to make sense. But I'll elaborate on that later. I really like this attention given to fleshing out a denizen on the train. Most of them have lives and stories, but not really character faults of their own. The closest so far was MT, or Lake, and even she felt like an exception rather than the norm. But the lives of denizens and how they are affected by passengers is a big side plot in this season. It's an interesting angle to explore life on this train at. Going back to the boys, the show does a pretty great job at establishing Ryan and Min's personalities right away. So for the first half or so of the season, the events unfold about the way we'd expect them to. Ryan jumps into situations with the first solution he can think of, even if it's a really weird one, like flirting with a literal cat, while Min stands around cautiously strategizing. What I like about their differing personalities, though, is that it's easy to say one is better than the other. Heck, if you're a viewer, you probably relate to at least one of these two and thought they had the better approach in the beginning. But it's not that simple. The way both Ryan and Min handle tasks can be good or bad. A good example of this is in the Pig Baby car. Ryan takes a leap of faith to get a book they need at the slightest suggestion, while Min doesn't want to take such a risk. In that case, Ryan is right to take action because it was the only way to get what they needed. Later, Ryan wants to do an extravagant recipe while Min wants to do something simpler that they can handle. In that case, Min was right because they wasted a lot of time and ingredients trying stuff that was too ambitious. Their lack of communication leads to a lot of headbutting and misunderstandings. While it had happened before, the first time they noticed their numbers going down, Min immediately misinterprets this as Ryan being the only reason they're on the train because he had learned a lesson when it happened. Sure, that adds up. He is the one who forces Min onto the train by stealing his keys, and Min can't be wrong because he has everything figured out. He obviously knows more than Ryan. Min was raised to become a model adult, so anything that isn't meticulously planned out feels like chaos and failure, including getting involved in Ryan's life. Anything he tackles with patience should work out well because he thought it out. However, being cautious and following a laid out path doesn't mean you're automatically right. Believe me, I wish it did, but sadly, that's not the case. As Min is shown blatantly in the Astro Q car, where a bunch of people wait around as instructed, resulting in them waiting to death.
Waiting didn't work. You can mess up even if you stand still.
Oh man, that line really hit me hard. I'm gonna need a minute. That cut pretty deep. Alright, I'm back. Where were we? Alright, Min's highly conditioned worldview is being challenged on an existential level. See, Min is an only child, with parents who place all their expectations on him to be an overachiever, to practice classical music and get into a great school and get a practical job. Since nobody ever asked Min what he wanted, that's what he's convinced himself he wants to do with his life, or at least tries to. And I think that's part of the reason why he finds Ryan's go big or die trying attitude so suffocating. It's not just different from how Min was raised, but it's somewhat similar. Min thinks that Ryan's dream to become a rock star was something he pushed onto him rather than Min getting to make his own choices, like he believes Ryan has been able to. Though we do see that Min really does love playing music. Each time Min gets close to finding his own happiness or mending his relationship with Ryan, something always pushes him back. Whether it's the expectations put upon him, or the distrust he's developed towards his best friends from the times he has felt left down, or even just his own insecurities. Min's need for personal growth, despite being a very accomplished young man, takes on a lot of very human forms. But just because Ryan is a free spirit following his dream to become a musician doesn't mean he doesn't have roadblocks of his own. Even though he's very passionate and enthusiastic about being a rock star, it's clear right from the start that he wasn't really getting anywhere. He comes off as risky and confident, trying the most outlandish and crazy solutions to get them out of a car. Most of the time, his out-of-the-box thinking leads to more problems than it solves, so Ryan's problem should be obvious. Because he's a loose cannon, he needs to dial it back a bit. And while that is part of his problem, there are times where taking an unorthodox approach or just running in and taking a chance do pay off. Much like Min, there's a deeper struggle going on here. Really, Ryan's boasting and confidence is just one giant coping mechanism, being big and loud so he'll be heard and people will take him seriously, which ironically tends to have the opposite effect. While Min is an only child, Ryan is part of a large family with several siblings, a difference in their upbringings that I actually didn't notice right away, but explains so much about them. Deep down, Ryan is a very lonely kid. His family is too big to worry about him, he can't hold down a relationship, and he doesn't seem to have any friends outside of Min. Ryan also has the burden of wanting to become a famous musician, something that very few people, even under the best of circumstances, achieve. And while Ryan is by no means a bad singer or musician, he's hardly Bob Dylan. Ryan not only has the pure passion to live his life playing music, but maybe something to prove to a family who doesn't seem to care enough about him to check up on him, and his only friend going down a much different path. One that said best friend keeps saying could be ruined by getting involved with him. Still, while Ryan is hardly a success and is frustrated by that, he wouldn't want to be doing anything else with his life. When Min is having his doubts about playing with Ryan again in the party car, he shares that things can always be worse. Ryan tends to focus more on the fun and exciting parts of his life, even with those deeper insecurities, which is why he can't wrap his head around the way Min lives his life. Like I've said, the differences between these two causes a lot of conflict, but the brilliant thing about how Infinity Train approaches their tests is that neither of them is right all the time. Sometimes either Min or Ryan will have a right idea to solve a problem in a car, and the other just has to trust them, but more often than not, their individual solutions don't tend to get a good result. It's only when they work together do they balance their methods out and get through an obstacle smoothly. Coupled with those little moments sprinkled in where they aren't burdened by their situation or the expectations they put upon themselves or the frustration of having to reacquaint with each other as they spend so much time apart, where they just have a laugh or a harmless conversation about music. That's what makes you see why these guys are best friends, and maybe even how they still can be. There's an especially nice moment between the group where Ryan and Min bail on the performance of the party car and just have a calm jam session in the bathroom, even inviting Kez to join them. It might be the sweetest moment this season. But this is Infinity Train. People don't stay happy for long, even if on the whole, this is a much lighter story than seasons past, especially with a lighter body count than usual. Characters appear to be killed, but it's fine, they get better later. I think it really says something about the show when Kez disappears into a corridor at one point, and a lot of us did not expect her to come back. But I think to get to the true heart and intention of the season, we need to head to Kez's home in the castle car, where the consequences of Kez's actions come to bite her in the glittery bottom section. See, the reason she led Ryan and Min to the car she calls home is because the castle, Morgan, blames her for the loss of a passenger that used to live with them, so she was hoping that giving her new passengers would stop her from being mad. This is where Kez's flighty disregard for her actions goes from being played for laughs to an actual problem that needs to be answered for. for. When it hurts people she actually cares about. Even though she thought she'd be giving Min and Ryan a good deal too, to live with them and put all their problems behind them, she didn't take their actual feelings into account, just how to make her own situation better. Saying you made a mistake isn't the same thing as apologizing. That's actually really mature. Kez jokes around about making mistakes, but then thinks it's the other person's problem when they get mad at something she did. Not taking accountability for your actions can have major unintended consequences. From personal ones, like having everyone around you be mad at you all the time for things you don't try to genuinely apologize and take responsibility for, to more physical ones, like having several cars worth of denizens out for your shiny little head, including the pig toddler? Nope, still weird. However, the important thing here to me is that they don't paint Kez as a bad person, just a not great at being good one. She does care about others, including the passenger, Jeremy, who she and Morgan lost. The boys assume that something terrible must have happened to him to make Morgan so malicious towards Kez, and honestly, she kind of has a track record for destruction that would back that up. But that's not quite the case. The scene where she explains why Jeremy was on the train and what she said that led to him getting his exit is probably my favorite scene in the season. Watching Kez recount the story is so sweet but devastating, so personal and emotional. She helped Jeremy come to terms with an accident he blamed himself for, but the result made Morgan angry in the process. You know, I never really thought about how denizens feel when passengers leave. We've definitely seen ones that form very strong bonds with passengers, so it's not unreasonable to believe that the goodbyes don't leave their scars on some. Morgan was so hurt by Jeremy's departure after he lived with them for years that she constructed a labyrinth to keep other passengers out, likely to keep herself from feeling abandoned again. It's no wonder Kez thinks she did something wrong, but this time she didn't. And that moment where Kez goes,
"I helped?"
is so heartbreaking in all the right ways. Personally, I love the philosophy behind Kez's problem, that you can be a good person, but not be great at it. What matters is how much you're willing to work on becoming a better one. When you think about it, that's kind of the entire idea behind the Infinity Train. Actually, Ryan and Min did with Kez's situation around Jeremy what they should be doing around their own. Get the whole story to fully understand the feelings behind the actions. Something they have not been doing with each other. They've just been making assumptions about each other's lives, both bad and good. Min admits he's jealous of Ryan for having the easy life, going on fun road trips and becoming a rock star, not knowing how much trouble Ryan's been having making it as a musician. Meanwhile, Ryan is envious of Min for accomplishing things and having parents who actually care about his well-being, even though, to Min, it's controlling all of his choices, and not necessarily what he wants to do with his life. It all feels like a simple story, yet the layers to how these boys feel about each other and how that makes them feel about their own lives makes it much more nuanced and human. Those questions about identity and relationships is yet another thing Infinity Train excels at, and the struggles they give them to emphasize those conflicting feelings are magnificent at portraying that. Probably the most well-known from this season is when Ryan gets his exit by saying he won't leave Min behind, but he can't take it then without doing exactly that. Even just thinking of leaving for a second is enough for the train to raise his number back up. And of course Ryan doesn't tell Min about getting his exit, why would he? It all illustrates the complexities that can come with just being a person without feeling contrived, how actions can go a long way, how assumptions can lock out the real perspective, how thinking or even doing bad things doesn't inherently make you a bad person. It's that kind of authenticity and honesty we really need on television. Now, we could go right into how this is all resolved, but a certain someone just had to put the brakes on the train for a game-changing moment.
Hello! New announcement. You're all on your own now.
Oh my god! Okay, it's happening! Everybody stay calm!
Alright everyone, time to geek out about lore. Well, for the most part, this season isn't very heavy on recurring world building, for lack of a better term. What little there is vastly intriguing. Like the first scene on the train this season being with Amelia and a much different one, or should I say one. These 30 seconds speak volumes about this point in time and how different it is from the way we know these two now. With Amelia apparently being in a partnership of sorts with one, learning about the train firsthand and occasionally even helping him run it. One seems much more detached than the scrambled one we know and love, putting everything into matters of mathematics. When one was originally in full control, there weren't handy instructional videos to tell passengers what they needed to do. But then Amelia came along and might have gotten close to him. Close enough that he takes her suggestion to give passengers their personal belongings back. It fills in some blanks in the timeline while raising a lot of questions about what's going on behind the scenes this season. Most of these moments are only a few seconds long, but the subtle actions in those moments are so valuable to longtime viewers. When Amelia is pondering something, as one says that statistically anything can happen on the train, we all know that gears are turning for the inevitable. And as much as people wanted more, and trust me, I do too, seeing Amelia's takeover from an outsider's perspective makes it all the more shocking, including how it wasn't as smooth as originally perceived. It's just... God, it's amazing! All these peeks into how even small fractions of these events went down is so exhilarating to see. Gee, it sure would be great if we had a chance to see the full story right in front of us, wouldn't it? Well, while the train is being taken over by a brilliant grieving widow, the boys still have some emotional growth to work on. All the roadblocks they've hit start to take a toll on them, especially Ryan, and those angry denizens are still at their door. But with enough time to just sit and talk, things slowly start to work out. The funny thing about the season when I first saw it was that even though we have an entire episode dedicated to their life on Earth and hints at what is missing from them, I wasn't quite sure what the ultimate answer was going to be. Would they find some kind of compromise where they could live their different lives together, or understand that friends can be close even if they go their separate ways? All I knew was that they were going to have to find that solution together. In the end, all their problems can be boiled down to a lack of understanding the other person and the pressures of the outside world. The train takes away the outside world and forces them into a situation where all they have is each other, which is where they realize that that's all they want. Ryan thought he had to be a success right away to prove he was worth something and that his dream wasn't a stupid one. But what makes him and Min the happiest is when they play music not to a roaring crowd, but with each other. That's all they need to be happy. Upon realizing that, Min chooses his own direction in life. Even if it doesn't lead to success or approval from his family, it's what will make him happy. Playing music and touring with his best friend. They get their exits by realizing that that's enough. That it's the journey that matters and not necessarily the destination. Kez even gets some of that sweet personal growth. All this time, she thought that ignoring the mistakes you make will make them go away, but it's only through acknowledging them and taking the proper steps to make amends can those mistakes have the chance of being forgiven. And that's what gets the denizens off their backs. All three of them go through sort of the same thing during all this. Basically, work to understand someone else's feelings and actions rather than assuming you know what's best. Besides, in taking the time to understand others, you might understand a bit more about yourself.
That's like pretty metal.
When they get back home, Ryan and Min live out their dream, playing music together. Yeah, it's at an open mic night in upstate New York, hardly Madison Square Garden, but they're doing what they've always wanted together, giving the season an epic encore with the catchy tune, Train to Nowhere. Personally, I'd consider this Infinity Train's honorary theme song.
Train to nowhere, at least you're there.
Overall, Book 4 of Infinity Train had a lot of what makes this show so remarkable, while exploring new directions that can be taken with it. I'd agree with the majority consensus that it was a much lighter outing than seasons past, but it's still just as strong in the writing department, at exploring its characters in interesting ways and giving them creative and challenging obstacles. Delving into the choices in life in a very down-to-earth way while putting it through fantastical scenarios, expanding on what life on this train can be like for those who call it home, with the cherry on top being exploring the train during a very different time, seeing how that affects the journey of our heroes, and getting even the slightest glimpses into the grander story that we're so well acquainted with. All conveyed with strong writing, well thought out animation work, and lively voice acting. While the season was well received, I do think the experience was soured, or at least shaped somewhat, by the announcement that this was the end of the line for Infinity Train. That's right, this show was cancelled. It is no more. It has ceased to be. It's gone to meet its maker. Its maker mourned its loss on Twitter and Reddit. It's bereft of life. It rests in peace. If what was left of it wasn't available on HBO Max, it would be pushing up daisies. This is an X program.
Well, I better replace it then.
What? Yeah, I'm frustrated enough to rip off another bit. Infinity Train is one of the best shows I've ever seen. It's one of those shows I would have no trouble recommending to everyone. It has a premise unlike most shows out there, where it's very unlikely to get stale or stagnant, because the concept and characters are ever changing. It has limitless potential, and these last 4 seasons have only proven that time and time again. There was so much more planned for the show, including the planned season 5 exploring a topic we've all wanted to see since book 1. What little we do know looks fantastic, but that's not surprising for this show. It's all fantastic. What is surprising is that the powers that be just didn't see that there was a place for this show. Infinity Train deserves to keep running down those tracks. This can't be its final stop. For now, don't let Infinity Train be forgotten. Support it where you can, through viewership and engagement. Heck, part of the reason I made this video was so I'd have something to share for the next Finish Infinity Train campaign. Hopefully, with enough support from viewers and fans who have already been very vocal about wanting more, we'll board that train to nowhere again someday. Thanks for watching, everyone. Definitely let me know what you thought of the season in the comments below. That's why this series is called Let's Talk About. I want to give a very special thanks to my patrons who help support my content, including David L. Sproul, Sebastian Canino of Cinemageddon Reviews, Chelsea A. Crandall, Hawk Hero, Crowless, and Jinx Productions. If you'd like to join these fine people in supporting my content while getting cool exclusive perks, you can check out my Patreon page at the link in the description, as well as my other social media if you'd like to follow me on any of those. Thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you guys next time.